When I was a young boy growing up in Eugene, Oregon, all I ever wanted was a bicycle. There was something about riding that captivated me. Freedom, adventure, the thrill of movement. But my parents were overprotective. They thought cycling was too dangerous and never allowed it. I'd watch from the porch as my friends sped past our house, laughing and racing one another. It hurt, quietly and deeply. Years later, when I was finally old enough, I saved up money from a summer job and bought my first bike. It was basic, but dependable, and instantly became my obsession. Every weekend, I'd set off to explore new trails across Oregon. What began as a hobby soon turned into my escape. As time went on, I got confident enough to ride deeper, more isolated routes. I'd done solo rides before and always came back feeling stronger. So one cool autumn morning, I decided to tackle a trail in the Tillamook State Forest. The forest was beautiful, quiet, and nearly empty that time of year. Exactly what I was looking for, space to think. I left early with a backpack full of essentials, snacks, tools, and water. For hours, everything was calm. The trail wound gently through towering trees, golden leaves fluttering down, covering the ground in slippery layers. Every now and then, I passed a lone hiker or cyclist, but as I went further in, the trail emptied out. It was sometime after noon when I felt something wrong with my bike. I stopped, stepped off, and checked the tire flat. Totally unexpected. I knelt down in the dirt and started digging through my pack for the repair kit. The forest was utterly still. Then I heard it, leaves rustling just off the trail, behind a cluster of bushes. I froze. My heart raced. "Hello," I called out, trying to sound calm. No reply. The sound vanished as quickly as it had come. Maybe it was just an animal. I shook it off and went back to fixing the tire. That's when a scream tore through the forest. High-pitched, human, desperate. It echoed around me like it was bouncing off invisible walls. I jumped to my feet, scanning the trees. My hand shook. The scream didn't return, but I knew I was not alone. Then something moved. In the brush, I turned and saw him. A man stepped out of the undergrowth. Thin, ghostly pale, wearing a torn black suit caked with dirt. His eyes were wild, locked on mine. He stood completely still, raising one skeletal arm and pointing directly at me. He didn't say a word, didn't blink, just stared. My voice cracked as I called out, "Do you need help?" Nothing. He just stood there, mouth half open, silent and frozen. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. Then he opened his mouth wide and screamed. It wasn't human. It sounded like a warning, like a signal to someone else. I panicked, grabbed my pack and ran. I didn't care about the bike anymore. I just wanted to get away. He chased me, sprinting after me through the trees, shrieking. His footsteps pounded the trail behind me. I could hear how close he was, but I didn't look back. Then up ahead I saw a man, standing near a tree, holding a rifle. A hunter. I sprinted toward him, yelling for help. Without hesitation, he turned, saw the panic on my face, and raised his weapon. 2 gunshots cracked through the air, aimed high over the man behind me. Instant silence followed. When I turned around, the man was gone. Just gone. Swallowed by the forest. The hunter helped me catch my breath. We returned to my bike, watching the woods with every step. We fixed the tire together. Then he walked with me all the way to the road, rifle at the ready. Before we parted, he told me to report what happened. That night, I called the Tillamook County Sheriff. What they said chilled me. They weren't surprised. Turns out there had been other reports. Strange people spotted in the deep woods. Some were believed to be squatters, others mentally ill, hiding from the world. Most kept to themselves, but some didn't. They said they'd investigate, but I never heard anything after that. I still don't know who that man was, or why he chased me. What might have happened if that hunter hadn't been there? I still ride, but never alone, never deep into the woods. The forest used to feel peaceful. Now it feels like it's watching, because some places aren't meant to be explored, and some people aren't meant to be found. Ever since I was a kid, cycling has always been my passion. I still remember when my dad gave me my first bike. I fell in love instantly with the sense of freedom it gave me, cruising through our small town in West Virginia. As I got older, biking remained my favorite pastime. I loved long solo rides, discovering quiet roads and new trails, especially through the scenic hills around our area. One crisp autumn morning, with the air cool and clean, I set out for one of those solo rides through the peaceful hills near Elkins. I left early, planning a full day of exploring and enjoying the calm of nature. After coasting along familiar paths for a while, I noticed a narrow trail that looked like it could shave off some time. I paused, pulled out my map. The shortcut wasn't clearly labeled, but it appeared to connect back to my planned route. Curious and feeling adventurous, I veered off onto the dirt trail, heading into the deepening woods. It became clear quickly that this path hadn't been used in ages. The trees grew tight together, casting shadows and dimming the light. It felt like dusk even though it was morning. Branches tugged at my sleeves as I navigated the uneven ground. The silence was thick, broken only by my breathing and the crackle of dry leaves under my tires. Eventually, after a longer ride than expected, the trail opened up into a wide clearing. In the center was a rusted, tall fence. Beyond it sat a large stretch of land and an old wooden structure in the distance. There were no signs, no posted warnings, nothing at all to say who it belonged to. It looked deserted, but the solid fence made me uneasy. I decided to turn back. Just as I began to pivot my bike, I heard a faint rustle in the trees. I glanced around quickly, but the undergrowth was too dense to see anything clearly. Maybe a deer or raccoon. Still, my pulse began to speed up. I climbed back on my bike and began riding slowly back the way I came. Then I heard it again, footsteps, leaves crunching underfoot, pacing me through the woods. Hidden, but unmistakably there. A chill crept up my spine, and a cold sweat broke out across my face. Someone was following me. "Hello," I called, trying to sound calm. "Is anyone there?" Only silence answered me. No reply, just stillness. My nerves shot up. I started pedaling faster, trying to make it back to the main trail as quickly as I could. But no matter how fast I went, the footsteps kept pace, moving through the trees alongside me. Then my front tire struck something, a sharp rock buried in the leaves, and I lost control. My bike flipped sideways, and I slammed to the ground. Dirt and stones tore at my elbows and knees. I laid there, stunned. Pain flared, but I quickly sat up. Blood dripped from a few shallow cuts, but I could move. Nothing was broken. Then I heard it again, footsteps. Closer this time. Terrified, I looked toward the sound. About 30 feet away, near the trail's edge, stood a man in ragged hunting clothes. His beard was thick, face worn and weathered. In his hands, he held a rifle, barrel aimed at the ground. He didn't say a word, just stared at me, cold and unreadable. I stammered, trying to stay calm. I didn't know this was private property. I thought it was a shortcut. "I'm sorry." Still nothing. No reply. Just a slow lift of the rifle, not at me, but a clear warning. He knew what he was doing. The silence from him was worse than if he had shouted. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bike and started pushing it hard down the trail. Pain shot through my arms and legs, but I kept going, heart pounding so loud it was all I could hear. I didn't look back, but I could hear him, still moving through the woods, steady and quiet beside the trail. Every step felt like a lifetime. My legs ached, but fear kept them moving. Then I saw the break in the trees ahead. The main trail again, familiar and open. Relief hit me like a wave. I jumped on my bike and pedaled like hell toward it. Once I reached the main trail, I stopped and looked back. The man stood at the wood's edge, not moving, just watching. He didn't follow, but that blank stare burned into my mind as I rode away. I made it home bruised, shaken, and scared. The first thing I did was call the police. I told them everything. The officer said I'd likely ended up on the land of a recluse, someone locals knew as hostile to trespassers. Apparently, hunters had wandered onto his land before, and he'd gotten more aggressive over time. Then the officer said something that made my blood run cold. "No one's seen him in months," he said. Some think he might have died out there. That hit me like a punch. If no one had seen him recently, then who had I encountered? For weeks, I couldn't ride my bike without remembering that man's eyes. It took a long time before I felt safe biking alone again. Even then, I stuck close to town. My family told me I was okay now, but deep down, I wasn't convinced. One evening, I was sitting in a local coffee shop when a headline in the newspaper caught my attention. Local authorities search for missing hunter in remote hills. I froze. I picked up the paper and read. It described a man named Albert Thompson, a hunter who had lived in isolation for years. He owned a remote property in the hills, the exact place where I'd had my encounter. The article said neighbors reported him missing after not hearing from him for months. Police searched the area. They found his cabin abandoned, dust thick, roof partially collapsed. But what caught my eye was what they found in the woods. Torn up clothes, empty shell casings, and a rusted rifle propped against a tree. Then came the detail that froze my blood. The rifle was found the same day I encountered the man in the woods. I sat back in my chair numb. If Albert had been gone for months, who had I seen? Who followed me? The police never solved the case. Albert was never found. His story became one more strange tale in local lore. I tried to tell myself it was just a squatter or some stranger passing through. But I couldn't shake the dread that something worse lurked in those hills. Winter rolled in, coating West Virginia in snow. I kept myself busy, avoiding thoughts of the woods and what I'd seen. Eventually, I felt almost normal again. I still rode my bike now and then, but never too far. I stayed near people near home. Then one day, I got a call from my friend Jake. He's an experienced hunter and knows those hills better than anyone. He said he and some others were planning to hike the area near Thompson's land. I paused. When he asked why, I told him everything. I poured it all out, every detail, hoping he'd understand why they shouldn't go. Luke was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. "You're not the only one," he said. "My grandfather used to tell stories about that place. Hunters disappearing. Their gear showing up days or weeks later. Always scattered, always strange. People blamed Albert, but no one could prove anything." He paused again. "There's something wrong with those woods," he said finally. "Something that doesn't want people there." That gave me chills. Luke wasn't someone who believed in ghost stories. He didn't say stuff like that lightly. Hearing it from him made my own experience feel even more real and terrifying. Luke and his group ended up canceling the trip. After our talk, none of them felt safe going out there. A small relief, knowing they wouldn't end up like me, or worse. But I still haven't gone back to that part of the hills, and I don't think I ever will. Just outside the quiet town of Carlinville, Illinois, the world shifts. So far removed that even one streetlight feels urban, with mailboxes spaced out by quarters of a mile. The moment you exit the gas station, cell service disappears, and static takes over the FM radio. It's the kind of silence that presses against your skin. Most nights after our shift at the grain elevator, my best friend Kyle and I would link up at the town's edge, strap on our helmets, and ride an old 16-mile loop. It kicked off on County Road 9, past two decommissioned reservoirs, Lake Anderson and the smaller one locals just call number 2, then snaked through miles of second-growth forest before spilling back onto flat farmland. We knew every bump in the pavement, like it was carved into our muscle memory. But that night, we left later than usual. A bottleneck at the loading dock delayed me, and by the time I scarfed down a sandwich and biked to our regular meeting point, the sun was already kissing the treetops. I almost said we should skip it, but the air was so crisp you could see your breath. After a sweltering summer, it felt like relief. Kyle just grinned and said, 16 miles? We've got this. We'll beat the dark. The first 6 miles felt familiar. Fields of corn on both sides, barn swallows darting low, the low mechanical hum of our gears. But as we neared the reservoirs, the whole evening seemed to tighten. Usually, frogs would croak and fish would splash in the shallow water. But this time, it was just the sound of our tires grinding and the thump of my heartbeat climbing a slope. We hit the woods right as the sun ducked below the ridge. Long slashes of orange light stretched between the trees, and the road twisted like a ribbon tossed over the hills. 2 short climbs, a big sweeping curve, and we reached the steepest descent, right at the loop's midpoint. Kyle dropped gears and stood up on his pedals. Halfway up, he eased off and motioned for me to stop. "Hold up," he whispered, even though no one else was around. At the hilltop, maybe 50 feet up, a man stood on the gravel shoulder. I remember how the last sunlight caught his flannel, faded red plaid, the seams frayed. He faced the woods, not the road, like he'd exited a car that wasn't there and forgotten why. No gear, no leash, just hanging arms that looked too still, like someone had positioned him and walked away. We coasted quietly forward, trying to stay silent. About 20 feet out, I called out, "Hey, are you all right?" No response. No movement. Kyle unclipped, his boots crunching the gravel. He raised his voice. "Sir, do you need help?" The man's body didn't shift, but his head rotated, just the head, angled unnaturally until his profile faced us. At first glance, he seemed young, but his skin looked grayish, like he'd been under flickering lights too long. His mouth hung slightly open, eyes glossy like wet marbles. He wasn't looking at us, just past, as if seeing something within himself. Then his jaw dropped further, wide and slow, until his whole chin trembled. No breath, no sound, lips peeling back to show a strip of teeth. A jolt of fear ran down my spine, electric and hot. Kyle backed up so quickly his rear wheel skidded. "Nope," he stammered. "We're leaving." I clipped in and pedaled hard, rocketing downhill, our bikes rattling over cracks and bumps, eyes on my mirror, only catching flashes of trees flying by. We didn't slow until the forest thinned and the moon's sliver danced on Lake Anderson's surface. We said nothing on the ride home. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the house breathe. When I did drift off, his blank stare jolted me awake. Around 3 a.m., I got up, wandered the kitchen, filled a glass from the tap. It tasted like rust, and stared out at the soybean field, just black rose under a white sky. No real reason, but I felt watched. The next day, I told myself I had to confirm it all really happened. Kyle had a dentist appointment, so I loaded my bike in the truck and drove out solo. Dark clouds were brewing in the west, and the light looked bruised, more like November than early fall. I parked near the reservoir and pedaled the familiar path, heart hammering in my ears. When I reached the big hill, the shoulder was empty, but skid marks from last night marred the asphalt. I laid my bike down. The gravel was dry. I saw deep-boot prints, the kind left by someone standing still, then scuffs that crossed the road and vanished into the brush. One heel looked like it had been dragged sideways. I stepped through the trees. About 10 feet in, I came across a crude campsite, rusted beer cans, busted pallet pieces, and a ring of fire rocks black with soot. But the ashes inside were stacked into a perfect cone. Neat. Intentional. Bones were scattered in it, thin, curved. Maybe rabbit. Or cat. Hard to say. Above, a bleached rope dangled from a maple branch. Both ends frayed. One still twitched. It swayed gently, though the air was still. Then I heard a twig snap deeper in the woods. I bolted, legs burning on the climb, throat tasting metallic. I didn't stop until I was locked inside my truck. That evening, I called Kyle and told him everything. He didn't interrupt. Then he said quietly, "I haven't been sleeping either. Every night around 2, he hears footsteps outside, slow, like someone walking through leaves. His bedroom is on the 2nd floor, 12 feet off the ground. 2 days later, he came over looking pale. He'd driven the loop in daylight, hoping to find joggers or something that made sense. Instead, he found a white cargo van in the ditch near the hill, door facing the woods, windshield covered by broken branches. No plates. The back was solid metal, no windows. He snapped a photo and reported it to the sheriff. Deputies said they'd investigate. The next morning, he drove past again, dust undisturbed, but the van was gone. Just deep impressions in the grass, and a clean patch of dirt remained. The following week passed in a blur. Work, sleepless nights, canceled rides. I cleaned my chain 3 times, never once riding. We told ourselves it would pass, that most things are explainable. But I kept the blinds closed, and Kyle slept downstairs with a bat. Then, late in the season, a post appeared on the Macoupin County Community Board, a blurry dusk photo. A tree-lined road, headlights catching a lone figure on the shoulder. Even pixelated, you could see the limp arms, pale face tilted skyward, and a red flannel shirt. The caption said, "Saw this guy near the reservoirs last night. Anyone missing someone?" Comments flooded in jokes, 2 people saying they'd seen him too. Then the post vanished. Admin said it broke rules. Maybe. Or maybe someone asked for it to disappear. We don't ride that loop anymore. We pick new routes, started earlier, stuck to open roads where nothing can sneak up. But some evenings, when sunlight hits the corn just right, I picture that shoulder and wonder if someone else is biking up that hill now, finding a man who doesn't belong. What really haunts me are the normal things left unexplained. The perfect cone of ash, the organized bones, the rope end swaying when the wind stood still. Nothing screamed ghost. It just whispered person, which feels worse. Each autumn brings the same gold leaves, the same hush after harvest. That road still waits, pretending it's just another peaceful stretch of rural Illinois. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's hiding. Still, on quiet nights, when the house is breathless and my heartbeat echoes in my throat, I remember gravel shifting, and a man in tattered flannel, jaw unhinging, eyes reflecting a void. You can ignore a story, delete a thread, move a van, but you can't erase a place. County Road 9 keeps its silence, and anyone riding into that dusk is only borrowing peace. Someday, I fear, the road might ask for something back.